The crystal chandelier above the dining table cast fractured light across 23 place settings, each one representing a family member who had gathered for what Mom called our traditional Thanksgiving celebration. I sat at the far end, closest to the kitchen door, which had been my designated spot for the past 8 years, ever since Dad died and the family dynamics shifted entirely. My brother Marcus stood at the head of the table where Dad used to sit, carving the turkey with theatrical precision. He'd gained weight since taking over the family business, which mostly consisted of attending charity galas and signing documents his assistant prepared. His wife Jennifer sat beside him, dripping in diamonds I knew came from the estate's discretionary fund. "Emma," Marcus said, not looking up from the turkey, "I noticed you drove that same Honda Civic again. Still can't afford anything better." I took a sip of water. "It runs well." "It's embarrassing," Jennifer chimed in. "What will people think when they see you parking that thing at family events?" My younger brother Kyle laughed from across the table. "Maybe she's saving up. What are you making now as a teacher? 40,000? 50. The salary is adequate for my needs," I said quietly. Mom set down her wine glass with enough force to make it ring. "This is exactly what your father worried about, Emma. You have no ambition. No drive. You chose a pedestrian career while your brothers built something meaningful." I cut a small piece of turkey. "Teaching is meaningful to me." "Teaching," Marcus scoffed. "Dad paid for Stanford and you became a middle school teacher. Do you know how disappointed he was?" I did know, actually. I knew exactly what Dad thought about everything, but I kept eating. Marcus's son, my nephew Brad, spoke up from his position near the middle of the table. "Uncle Kyle said you still rent an apartment. Is that true?" "It is," I confirmed. "That's so sad," Brad's sister Morgan added. "We have the beach house and the mountain cabin. Don't you want nice things?" Kyle leaned back in his chair, gesturing with his wine glass. "The problem with Emma is she never understood what family legacy means. Dad built an empire and she opted out." "I didn't opt out of anything," I said calmly. "I chose my own path." "A path to mediocrity," Mom said. "Your brothers manage the family investments, sit on important boards, contribute to society in meaningful ways. You grade papers and make lesson plans." Jennifer touched her diamond necklace. "I don't mean to be rude, Emma, but have you considered that maybe you're just not cut out for the kind of life we lead? Some people are meant for greatness and others are meant for ordinary lives." "That's very philosophical," I said. Marcus finally sat down, having finished his carving performance. "Since we're all here, I want to discuss something important. Mom and I have been working with the estate attorneys, reviewing Dad's trust structure." My hand remained steady as I reached for my water glass. "We've realized that the current distribution plan is inefficient," Marcus continued. "Too many beneficiaries diluting the family wealth. We need to consolidate resources among those who actually contribute to the family legacy." Mom nodded approvingly. "Your father would want his money used wisely, invested in people who honor his memory through their achievements." Kyle raised his glass. "Here's to smart financial planning." Marcus looked directly at me for the first time that evening. "Emma, we've decided to restructure your position in the family trust." I set down my fork. "I see. You'll never see a penny of Dad's money," Marcus said, his voice cold and final. "We've consulted with our attorneys and given your lack of contribution to the family business, your minimal financial success, and your general disinterest in family affairs, we're removing you from any future distributions." The table went silent except for the clink of silverware. Several cousins exchanged glances. An aunt covered her mouth. Mom leaned forward. "You don't deserve the family fortune, Emma. Your brothers have earned their place. You've earned nothing." Jennifer smiled sympathetically. "It's probably for the best, really. Sudden wealth can be corrupting for people who aren't used to it. You're better off living within your teacher's salary." "We're thinking of you," Kyle added. "Character building and all that." Marcus pulled out his phone. "In fact, I'm scheduling a meeting with the estate attorneys next week to formalize everything. The family assets will be redistributed among those who've proven themselves worthy." I simply nodded and kept eating. The turkey was dry, but I chewed slowly and deliberately. "You're taking this well," Mom observed suspiciously. "I'm processing," I said. "There's nothing to process," Marcus said. "This is final." The family money will go to family members who matter. You made your choice when you became a teacher instead of joining the business. Actions have consequences. Brad whispered loudly to Morgan. Aunt Emma's getting disinherited. Harsh, Morgan whispered back, not quietly enough. Kyle's wife Rachel, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. I think this is really mature of you, Emma. Accepting your position in the family hierarchy without making a scene. Very dignified. Thank you, I said. The rest of dinner passed with conversation swirling around me. Marcus discussed his upcoming trip to Monaco. Jennifer talked about remodeling their third bathroom. Kyle mentioned considering a yacht purchase. Mom detailed her plans for a charity gala that would cost more than my annual salary to attend. I finished my meal, helped clear some plates despite protests that I didn't need to, and excused myself early. Already leaving? Marcus called out. Can't afford to stay for dessert? Early morning tomorrow, I said. Grading papers. Of course, Mom said dismissively. Run along to your little apartment and your little life. I drove my Honda Civic home through quiet suburban streets, past houses decorated with autumn wreaths and early Christmas lights. My apartment was small, a one-bedroom in a building that had seen better decades, but it was clean and comfortable. I'd chosen it specifically because it was modest, unremarkable, the kind of place that fit the image I'd carefully cultivated for 8 years. I made tea and sat on my second-hand couch, listening to the couple upstairs argue about whose turn it was to take out the trash. My phone buzzed with a text from Kyle. Hope you're not too upset. It's just business. I didn't respond. Another text from Jennifer. If you need help with your budget, I know an excellent financial counselor for people in your income bracket. I turned off my phone. The next morning I was up at 6, grading essays at my small kitchen table when my phone rang. The number was familiar. Whitmore, Davidson and Associates, the law firm that had handled Dad's estate planning. Emma Chin speaking, I answered. Miss Chin, this is Richard Whitmore. I hope I'm not calling too early. Not at all. I'm an early riser. I received several rather concerning messages from your brother Marcus yesterday evening, Richard said, his voice tight with professional restraint. He indicated that the family has decided to restructure the trust distribution and remove you entirely from future allocations. He mentioned something about that at dinner, I said. Miss Chin, I need to be very clear about something. Your brother does not have the authority to make such decisions. I sipped my tea. I understand. I don't think you do, Richard said. I've been trying to reach Marcus this morning, but his phone appears to be off. I need to schedule an emergency meeting with all relevant parties. What time works for you? I asked. Would 10 o'clock be possible? At our offices. I'll be there. Excellent. I'm also calling your mother and brothers. This situation requires immediate clarification. After hanging up, I dressed in simple slacks and a sweater, nothing expensive, nothing flashy. I looked exactly like what I'd appeared to be for 8 years. An underpaid teacher living a modest life. The law offices of Whitmore, Davidson and Associates occupied the 23rd floor of the Crawford building downtown. I'd been here many times, though Marcus didn't know that. The firm managed one of the largest estate portfolios in the state, and Dad had trusted them implicitly. I arrived at 9:45. The receptionist, Sandra, smiled warmly. Good morning, Miss Chin. Mr. Whitmore is expecting you. Conference room 3. Thank you, Sandra. Coffee, she offered. Please. Black. Conference room 3 had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Richard Whitmore stood reviewing documents, his silver hair impeccable, his suit custom-tailored. At 67 he'd been practicing estate law for 4 decades. Emma, he said, shaking my hand. Thank you for coming. Of course. Your family should arrive shortly. I've also asked Catherine Morrison from our trust management division to join us, as well as David Park, the senior accountant who handles the trust distributions. As if on cue, Catherine and David entered, both carrying thick folders. Catherine was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. David was younger, maybe 40, with the careful precision of someone who dealt in exact figures. Miss Chin, Catherine said, nodding respectfully. Good morning, I replied. We made small talk about the weather, the traffic, neutral topics that filled the space while we waited. At precisely 10 o'clock the conference room door opened and my family arrived en masse. Marcus entered first, radiating confidence in his expensive suit. Mom followed, draped in designer labels. Kyle came next with Jennifer and Rachel trailing behind. Even Brad and Morgan had been included, apparently viewing this as some kind of family field trip. "Richard," Marcus said, shaking the lawyer's hand firmly. "Good to see you. I assume this meeting is about finalizing the trust restructuring we discussed." Richard's expression remained neutral. "Please, everyone sit down." The family took seats on one side of the large conference table. I sat on the other side next to Richard, Catherine, and David. The positioning was not accidental. "Marcus," Richard began, "you left me several messages yesterday indicating your intention to remove Emma from the family trust distribution." "That's correct," Marcus said confidently. "We've made a family decision to consolidate assets among those who actually contribute to the family legacy. Emma has made it clear through her choices that she's not interested in being part of the family business." Mom nodded firmly. "It's what her father would have wanted." "Interesting," Richard said. "Because I handled Thomas Chen's estate planning personally for 23 years, and I can assure you that's not at all what he wanted." Kyle shifted in his seat. "With all due respect, things change. Dad's been gone 8 years. We've had time to assess everyone's contributions." "Contributions," Richard repeated. "Let's discuss contributions. Catherine, would you please provide an overview of the current trust structure?" Catherine opened her folder, but she didn't need to read from it. She had the numbers memorized. The Thomas Chen Family Trust, established in 2015, contains assets valued at approximately $83 million. These assets include the family business, real estate holdings, investment portfolios, and various other holdings. Jennifer's eyes widened. "83 million? I thought it was around 50. "The trust has performed exceptionally well over the past 8 years," Catherine said. "Largely due to strategic management decisions." Marcus leaned forward. "Right. Which is why those of us actively managing the assets should benefit proportionally." "Who exactly has been managing the assets?" Richard asked. "I have," Marcus said. "With Kyle's assistance and Mom's guidance." "Interesting," Catherine said. "Because our records show that you've signed documents placed in front of you, but the actual strategic decisions, investment choices, property acquisitions, business expansions, risk assessments, have all been made by the trust's designated controller." Kyle frowned. "What controller?" "We're the beneficiaries. We make the decisions." David Park opened his laptop. "Actually, under the terms of the trust established by Thomas Chen, there is one designated trustee with full decision-making authority. The beneficiaries receive distributions as determined by the trustee, but they do not control the trust itself." "That's ridiculous," Mom said. "I'm Thomas's widow. I have authority over his estate." "You have authority over his personal effects," Richard corrected gently. "The trust is a separate entity with its own governance structure." Marcus's confident expression was beginning to crack. "Fine. Then who is this trustee? We need to meet with them immediately to discuss the restructuring." Richard glanced at me. I gave a small nod. "The trustee," Richard said slowly, "is Emma Chen." The conference room went completely silent. Kyle laughed nervously. "That's impossible. Emma's a teacher. She doesn't know anything about finance." "On the contrary," Catherine said, "Ms. Chen holds a master's degree in business administration from Stanford, with a focus on estate management and fiduciary law. She also has a degree in education which she uses in her teaching career." "But," Jennifer started. "Ms. Chen," David continued, pulling up a spreadsheet, "has been the sole trustee of the Thomas Chen Family Trust since its inception in 2015. Your father established the trust 3 years before his death, and he named Emma as trustee because of her financial acumen, her integrity, and her lack of interest in personal extravagance." Marcus stood up abruptly. "This is insane. Emma drives a Honda Civic. She lives in a rental apartment. She makes $40,000 a year. I make $48,000 as a teacher," I said quietly. "Which is what I choose to take as salary from my profession. It has nothing to do with my access to resources." Mom's face had gone pale. "Thomas wouldn't do this." "Thomas did exactly this," Richard said firmly. "He spent 2 years planning this trust structure. He wanted to ensure the family wealth was managed by someone who valued substance over appearance, someone who wouldn't be corrupted by easy access to money, someone who genuinely understood what mattered in life. Emma barely speaks to us, Kyle protested. Emma attends every family function, Catherine corrected. She maintains relationships with all of you despite being consistently dismissed and undervalued. She's shown remarkable patience and grace. Richard pulled out a thick document. This is the trust agreement. I'll summarize the relevant sections. Emma Chin, as sole trustee, has complete authority over all trust assets, including distribution decisions, investment strategies, and asset allocation. The beneficiaries, that's all of you, receive monthly allowances as determined by the trustee. Marcus sank back into his chair. The monthly allowances. Yes, David said, pulling up another spreadsheet. Marcus Chin, $25,000 per month. Kyle Chin, $22,000 per month. Patricia Chin, $30,000 per month. Various cousins and extended family members. Amounts ranging from $5,000 to $15,000 per month. The numbers hung in the air like accusations. Over the past 8 years, David continued, the trust has distributed approximately $36 million to various family members. These distributions were approved and processed by Emma Chin in her capacity as trustee. Jennifer's diamonds suddenly seemed heavier around her neck. The beach house Marcus lives in, Catherine said, is owned by the trust. The mountain cabin, the investment in Kyle's startup, the funding for your mother's charity foundation, all of it comes from trust assets managed by Emma. Kyle's voice was barely a whisper. The yacht I was looking at would be purchased with trust funds, Catherine confirmed, if the trustee approved the expenditure. Mom turned to me, her eyes wide. You've been controlling everything this whole time? I've been managing the trust according to Dad's wishes, I said calmly. He wanted the family taken care of, and I've ensured that everyone has more than adequate resources to live comfortably. Marcus's hands were shaking. The restructuring I mentioned yesterday. Yes, Richard said. Let's discuss that. You stated your intention to remove Emma from future distributions. Emma, as trustee, you have complete authority to adjust any beneficiary's distribution at your discretion. This includes reducing or eliminating monthly allowances. The implications settled over the room like heavy snow. Last night, I said quietly, I received messages from family members making it clear that I'm not valued, not wanted, and not deserving of any family resources. As trustee, I need to consider whether continuing current distribution levels aligns with Dad's intentions for the trust. Emma, Mom started, her voice shaking, surely you don't. I spent Thanksgiving dinner, I continued, being told I'm mediocre, embarrassing, disappointing, and unworthy. Marcus specifically stated I would never see a penny of Dad's money. I didn't know, Marcus said desperately. I thought. You thought you were in control, I finished. You thought your allowance was guaranteed, that your lifestyle was secure, that you could treat me however you wanted without consequences. Richard cleared his throat. Emma called me at 6:30 this morning before I'd even reached out to the family. She wanted to discuss potential restructuring of the trust distributions. Kyle looked like he might be sick. Emma, please. I have overhead, expenses, commitments. You have a startup that exists entirely on trust funding, David said, reading from his notes. The business currently operates at a loss of approximately $40,000 per month, covered by your trust allowance. Rachel grabbed Kyle's arm. The house payment is due next week. The house you were planning to renovate, Catherine added, using a trust-funded construction loan. Jennifer turned to Marcus, panicked. The charity gala deposits are non-refundable. The gala your mother is hosting, Richard noted, with an estimated cost of $240,000, to be paid from trust funds. Mom stood up, her designer handbag falling to the floor. Emma, I'm your mother. You can't do this to family. I sat at the end of the table last night, I said, my voice still calm, still measured, while my family told me I don't matter. While you explained that I'm not good enough for the family legacy. While you announced plans to cut me off from something I've been controlling all along. Brad whispered to Morgan, this is insane. Your college tuition, David said, looking at Brad, is paid from the trust. Both of you. Full ride to private universities, housing included. Morgan's face crumbled. Marcus leaned forward, his earlier confidence completely gone. Emma, I apologize. Sincerely. We were wrong. We didn't understand the situation. You didn't understand, I agreed, because I chose not to advertise my position. Dad wanted the trust managed quietly, without drama or family politics influencing decisions. He wanted me to evaluate everyone's character, their choices, their treatment of others. We were awful to you, Kyle admitted, his voice breaking. We've been awful for years. You have, I confirmed. Jennifer was crying now, mascara running. Please don't take everything away. We have children. Obligations. I have no intention of leaving anyone destitute, I said. But I do intend to restructure distributions to reflect actual need versus unnecessary extravagance. Richard pulled out another document. Emma and I discussed several scenarios this morning. Would you like to present them? I opened my own folder which I'd brought with me. Scenario 1. I reduce all monthly allowances by 50% effective immediately. The saved funds will be redirected to charitable causes and educational trusts for the grandchildren, controlled by me until they reach 30. Mom gasped. $15,000 a month? How am I supposed to live on that? Most Americans live on far less, I said. You'd still have your house, your car, your basic needs met comfortably. Scenario 2, I continued. I eliminate all discretionary allowances entirely. Everyone receives a modest annual distribution of $50,000, with additional funds available only for documented medical expenses and educational costs. Kyle's face was white. That would destroy everything. It would require you to live within your means, I corrected. To possibly get jobs, manage budgets, make responsible financial decisions. There's a scenario 3, Richard said, watching the family carefully. Scenario 3, I said, involves a complete restructuring of the trust distributions based on demonstrated character, financial responsibility, and family values. Some members would see increases. Others would see significant decreases. It would require annual reviews and adjustments based on behavior. Marcus's hands were flat on the table as if steadying himself. What do you want from us, Emma? I want you to understand something fundamental, I said. I chose to be a teacher because I love teaching. I chose to live modestly because material possessions don't define my worth. I chose to manage this trust quietly because Dad asked me to, and because I wanted to see who my family really was when they thought they had all the power. We failed the test, Mom said quietly. Spectacularly, I agreed. Catherine pulled out another folder. Emma has also asked us to prepare documentation for several trust-funded initiatives. A scholarship program for underprivileged students studying education. A grant program for public school teachers pursuing advanced degrees. An endowment for the middle school where she teaches. How much? Kyle asked weakly. $5 million, Catherine said. Distributed over 5 years. These programs were part of Thomas Chen's original vision for the trust, documented in his letters to Emma during the trust's creation. David added, the trust can easily support these initiatives while maintaining family distributions, assuming those distributions are reasonable. Jennifer wiped her eyes. What happens now? I closed my folder. Now we have a conversation about what kind of family we want to be. About whether material wealth has corrupted our values or whether we can remember what Dad actually cared about. What did he care about? Brad asked, his voice small. Education, I said. Integrity. Kindness. Using resources to help others, not just to accumulate luxury goods. He built his business from nothing, worked 70-hour weeks, and never forgot what it was like to struggle. He created this trust to take care of family, yes, but also to create something meaningful. Richard stood. I'm going to leave you all to discuss this privately. You have my number. Whatever you decide regarding distributions, we'll implement it. Catherine and David gathered their materials. We'll prepare documentation for all scenarios, Catherine said. Just let us know which direction you choose. After the lawyers left, the conference room felt smaller. My family sat across from me, their earlier arrogance replaced with fear and uncertainty. I've made some preliminary decisions, I said. Effective immediately, I'm reducing Marcus's allowance to $15,000 per month. The beach house will be sold and you'll need to find housing within your new budget. Marcus nodded, not arguing. Kyle, your allowance is reduced to 12,000. Your startup has 6 months to become profitable or I'm cutting additional funding. Understood, Kyle whispered. Mom, your allowance drops to 20,000. The charity gala is cancelled. Instead, that money will fund the scholarship program. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Jennifer, Rachel, your discretionary access is revoked. You'll need to discuss any purchases over $500 with your husbands, who will need to justify them from their allowances. Both women looked down. Brad, Morgan, your college funding continues, but your spending accounts are reduced from $3,000 per month to $500. Your housing and tuition are covered, but you'll need to budget for everything else. That's fair, Brad said quietly. More than fair, actually. I stood up. These changes are temporary, pending a 6-month review. During that time, I'll be evaluating everyone's financial responsibility, their treatment of others, and their commitment to the values Dad tried to instill in us. What about you? Mom asked. What do you get? I get what I've always had, I said. A job I love, a life I'm proud of, and the knowledge that I'm managing Dad's legacy the way he wanted. I don't need more than that. Marcus stood as well. Emma, I know I can't undo years of terrible behavior with one apology, but I am truly sorry. We were cruel to you. We dismissed you and diminished you because we thought we could. We were wrong. You were, I agreed. But you have 6 months to prove you've learned something from this. Kyle approached me hesitantly. Can I ask you something? Why did you let us treat you that way for so long? Why didn't you tell us years ago? Because Dad wanted to see what kind of people we'd become when we thought we had power, I said. He knew that money reveals character. He was right. I picked up my modest purse, the same one I'd carried for 3 years. I'm going home to grade papers. Richard will send you all formal documentation of the new distribution terms by end of business today. I suggest you review them carefully. Emma, Mom called as I reached the door. Do you hate us? I turned back. No. I'm disappointed and I'm hurt, but I don't hate you. You're still family. But being family doesn't mean accepting abuse or subsidizing cruelty. Dad taught me that too. As I walked through the law office, Sandra looked up from her desk. Miss Chin, can I just say your father would be very proud of how you've handled everything. Thank you, Sandra. That means a lot. I drove my Honda Civic back to my apartment, past the expensive cars and luxury houses that my family had assumed I envied. The truth was simpler and more complicated than they'd ever understood. I didn't want what they had because what they had hadn't made them happy. It had made them entitled, careless with others' feelings, convinced of their own importance. That afternoon my phone started buzzing with messages. Marcus, thank you for not destroying us completely. We'll do better. Kyle, I'm looking at business courses to actually learn how to run my company. Jennifer, I'm sorry. Truly. Rachel, we took you for granted. I'm ashamed. Even Mom texted, your father always said you were the strongest of all of us. I didn't understand what he meant until today. I didn't respond to any of them immediately. They needed to sit with the discomfort, to understand that relationships require more than panic-driven apologies when someone finally reveals they have power. Instead, I made tea, put on comfortable clothes, and settled in to grade my students' essays on what success means to me. A 7th grader named Maria had written about her mother, who worked 2 jobs and still found time to help with homework. Success isn't about money, Maria had written in her careful handwriting. It's about being the kind of person others can count on. I wrote in the margin, beautiful insight, Maria. This is exactly right. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Richard. The family has already requested copies of all the documentation. I think they're taking this seriously. I replied, time will tell. Thanks for everything today. Your father chose well when he named you trustee, Richard wrote back. He knew you'd make the hard choices when necessary. As evening fell over the city, I thought about Dad, about the countless conversations we'd had in his final years about money and family and what really mattered. Emma, he'd said once, I'm leaving you in charge because you're the only one who understands that the money isn't the point. The money is a tool. It's what you do with it that matters. What should I do with it? I'd asked. Whatever brings genuine good into the world, he'd said. Take care of the family, but don't let them be destroyed by wealth. Help people who actually need help. And never, ever let them make you feel small for choosing substance over flash. I'd kept that promise. For 8 years I'd managed the trust quietly, lived modestly and watched my family reveal themselves. I'd endured their dismissiveness and their cruelty, all while ensuring they had everything they needed. But yesterday at Thanksgiving, when Marcus had announced I'd never see a penny of Dad's money, something had shifted. Not because I was angry, but because I realized that continuing to enable their behavior wasn't protecting them, it was harming them. The trust fund didn't belong to them. It didn't really belong to me either. It belonged to Dad's vision of what his family should become if they learned the right lessons. Yesterday they'd learned that money doesn't equal power. That appearances can be deceiving. That the quiet person at the end of the table might be the one holding all the cards. Tomorrow they'd start learning something harder. That rebuilding trust and family bonds after betrayal requires more than fear of financial consequences. It requires genuine change, sustained effort, and the humility to acknowledge how badly you've failed. I didn't know if they were capable of that transformation. But I'd given them the chance to try, and I'd be watching carefully over the next 6 months. Because that's what trustees do. That's what family does, when they actually understand what family means. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. Miss Chin, this is Brad. I just want you to know that I'm ashamed of how we talked to you yesterday. You were right to call us out. Thank you for still supporting my education. I won't waste it. I smiled and typed back, thank you for saying that, Brad. That's the beginning of real growth. Make your grandfather proud. Outside my window the city lights were coming on, millions of people living their lives, most of them without trust funds or family fortunes, most of them doing just fine. Better than fine in many cases because they'd learned to measure success by things that actually mattered. I had 42 more essays to grade, a lesson plan to finalize for Monday, and a trust fund meeting scheduled for next month to review the first round of scholarship applications. It was a good life. A meaningful life. And unlike my family, I'd never needed a trust fund to figure that out. But I was grateful Dad had trusted me with his, because now I had the power to help them figure it out too, whether they liked it or not. The Honda Civic had another 100,000 miles in it, easily. The apartment lease renewed next month. The essays wouldn't grade themselves. I got back to work knowing that the real work, the work of family healing and genuine transformation, was just beginning. And this time they'd have to earn every penny.